I'm just going to speak a little bit about the essence of my experience. I'm a social worker at the Summit School. I have been for a few years. It's a nonprofit, publicly funded private school for children with special needs in Queens. It ranges from middle school to high school to different locations. The children that I work with have experienced a broad spectrum of emotional and learning disabilities. Most students accepted into the program have not been successful in other educational settings, whether it's another special needs program or it's just a general education program that wasn't able to meet their IEP goal needs and things like that. The school in which I work, it has a smaller teacher-to ratio setting, so it's 12 to 1 to 1. It used to be 2, but funding got cut. My involvement in this panel was a result of my participation and assistance in the survey of educators related to the ethics in K12 science classroom, and also my participation in building of the socio-emotional curriculum of the emotional imprints, which I will write about if you read online. The idea of the current presentation is related to promotion of social emotional education throughout the pre-college curriculum as a way of raising ethical and responsible people who are also advanced academically and who are able to live in a collaboration and cooperation with others. So I piggyback off of Ina. I do believe that starting from young and not starting in college to talk about ethics in a philosophy course is very significant. I'm going to be referring to the Summit School as the basis for my thoughts on this topic, but it should be mentioned that there are other programs like mine, that also are valid and effective for children with special needs and for typical children. What distinguishes the Summit School from other programs is that it combines a rigorous academic program with the highest level of emotional and therapeutic support. Each staff member works as a part of an interdisciplinary team of teachers, support staff, occupational therapists, speech pathologists, social workers, there's a team of everybody, and administration staff. And I would also like to add parents. I feel like I'm married to every single related staff member in my entire, and we all speak and we still use paper even though it's a waste because, even though there's email, it's like a family and we are married to one another when it comes to serving the child. The Summit School itself uses a holistic perspective in the way the educational program is executed on a daily basis. It's viewed as a community, and each individual understands and adheres to this philosophy, and it provides the student, staff, and also the parents validation for effective and supportive work. For example, the first day of class, when children come in, it sounds very frivolous, but the rule of the school, the philosophy, is that there's no bullying and no teasing. Now, it sounds funny when you first say it because it sounds so simple, but my observation has been that the majority of children that come in, whether they're high school students or young students, let's say second grade, have had tumultuous experiences in their past settings that have led them to where they are at the point that they come to us. So hearing something like this as a philosophy is intrinsically imprinted in them that first transition year, and it is as simple as it sounds, is as, it burns with the same fire at the end of their first year transition experience. A lot of these students that come in feel like they were holding back the class in their past setting. They felt that they were being sent to the principal's office because of this. And they couldn't appropriately cope with the frustration in the classroom setting. Students develop negative expectations and perceptions about how others view them, as well as how they view themselves as individuals and as part of a group. When the first year students enter a program, they go through an adjustment period, as I spoke about, in which they appear to test the environment, they push boundaries. It's not perfect. They exert old, ineffective coping mechanisms. They regress back to, even worse than they were in their past educational setting. And at Summit, we believe that the children are able to internalize new approaches to learning and socializing only if there's a foundation of trust and consistency in their everyday educational setting, which brings us to ethics. I want to say that there's a common assertion, and by educators, professionals, parents, children, specifically children, about themselves, that children with special needs have less capability or insufficient IQ to perform well or reach normative academic and social expectations. If you're special needs, that means you're on a yellow school bus, and that means that you're not smart enough, and they feel that way about themselves, and other people feel that way about them. On the contrary, while some students do experience emotional and learning challenges, it's evident through my work that the change in the educational environment from the old school to the new school, coupled with the structure of the curriculum, an emphasis on emotional intelligence as well as academic achievement, allows these students the forum to succeed. And I'd also like to say that the program, I will have statistics on it, but the program is an academic program where children do graduate with the Regents credits. They do graduate with a high school diploma that you would get from going to a general education school. However, they still receive that just as important, just as significant, that social emotional background that they need, just like math, just like social studies, just like science, and so on. So that's a really interesting thing and a very important thing to think about and keep in mind. And I'm going to say this twice. Before children can be good students, they have to learn how to be good students. So before they can be good students, they have to learn how to be good students. And this learning is more effective through the socio-emotional interactions rather than just dry learning of reading or lecturing or memorizing rules. For many years, the Summit School developed its own educational system and standards, which are very close to recommendations of the International Academy of Education, published in 2003. Learning requires caring, teach everyday life skills, link social-emotional instruction to other social services, use goal setting to focus instruction, promote community service to build empathy. As part of the holistic educational program at Summit, children participate in social-emotional curriculum in which social workers, our cohort, we teach social skills classes to each homeroom class, just like they would get as a science class, a math class, we come in and we teach. Studies have shown that the enhancement of social skills promotes positive problem-solving abilities, improved academic performance and participation, and overall emotional well-being. The curriculum, I'm not going to go through the whole list, but the curriculum includes topics like conflict resolution, problem solving, cyber ethics, developing and maintaining positive interpersonal relationships with adults and peers, anxiety and stress reduction. And I will say, as an anecdotal note, that not all children are so gung-ho about it. There's definitely resistance. But the important piece, the thread that ties the whole thing together is the philosophy, the top-down approach, the philosophy of the school, that this is important in terms of your education, just like math, just like you were to cert someone to, study and, become an expert in their 6th grade biology class. It is a philosophy that keeps the entire machine running, well-oiled. So, all these skills and techniques are intertwined with reflecting on ethical issues and solving moral and ethical dilemmas. We focus on the unique needs of each student while tailoring the program to accommodate different learning styles and preferences. A school consists of more layers than just an academic institution that aims to prepare children for tests in the next grade level. A school is a playground for feelings, socialization, self-development, and development of strategies that prepare students to successfully interact, negotiate, and steer their way through challenges, frustration, academic demands, and relationships. It's important to say that the emotional curriculum, and it was said before, doesn't dictate what's right or what's wrong. That's not the goal of the program, and it never has been. Conversely, it allows a forum for self-discovery and discussion, like thought experiments, and it leads to a deeper understanding of how students view themselves, as well as how they affect their environment and the people in it. It allows students to safely explore various moral and ethical dilemmas they encounter daily through the use of staff, peers, and moral reasoning. To illustrate this point, I'm just going to talk about a couple of the things that we do. In one of the classrooms for a 6th grade classroom, I just did it, and I do it every year in the beginning, we talk about values. I come into the classroom and I put values on the board, and we talk about what is value. Well, value is what something is worth, value is, what is important to us, and so forth. And finally, we come down to the definition that value is traits and priorities, things that are important to you, and then we talk about what kind of values there are. I asked the students to discuss not only what the values are and what kind of values there are in the world, but I gave them a list of 14, and I asked them to prioritize these values unique to them. Now, prioritizing values and picking what your values are two different things. They had a little bit of trouble understanding, well, these things are not all important to me, as opposed to all of these things are important values, but now I must learn for myself individually which ones are most important and which is the least important, all being important. For a sixth grader, this was really difficult. It took three sessions, 3 hours total for them to get through this lesson. But by the end of it, not only did they understand a little bit more about what their values are and what's important to them, but we also discussed how it affects what they do, the decisions that they make every day, how they treat other people, how they treat themselves, the environment, and so forth. So this is very, it's a way to get the ball. You're not telling them what their values should be, but you are stirring a fire, and you're starting discussion about this at a very young age. Another example that I'd like to use to illustrate is when you are getting to know someone. Usually you walk into a classroom, the teacher says, everybody, say your name. Here's 3 M&Ms. If it's a red M&M, tell them what your favorite color is, and, what was your summer vacation like, and, let's get on with the year, and get to know each other through recess. Well, it's very important to get to know the person that you're sitting next to for the entire year. One of the activities that we did in our social emotional curriculum was I gave a sheet of 6 boxes. Each box had an emotion in it, but bored, apathetic, joyous, happy, angry, frustrated, and so on. And I asked the children to just simply draw or write, whatever their preference is, what makes them feel joyous or happy. For me, it's the beach. I like walking on the beach. It makes me feel relaxed, happy, joyous. I drew a picture of the beach in the sun. And the children did this. It took them quite a while. Why? To not only draw or write and decide which one you want to use to present to the class afterwards, but what makes you happy? What makes you bored? What makes you frustrated? What does that mean to be frustrated? That took a while. Taking into account, children realize that they have resistance to doing these types of things, to talking about these types of emotions, because they're vulnerable emotions. Talking about what makes you happy, like video games, may not be the same thing when you get to the end of the paper and talking about what makes you frustrated, what makes you angry. And, when it was the 3rd session of the class, children had to present. That was a struggle. Why? Because they didn't want to present their vulnerabilities to kids that they didn't know yet. So it wasn't just the responsibility of the presenter to present about themselves to the class, but then we talked about the responsibility of the class as an audience, listening actively and asking pertinent questions that were relevant and being respectful of what was being presented that was so vulnerable to the person, and the role of the audience to the presenter and the comfort and the trust within the classroom. It was wonderful. Children love it, and I think that it goes beyond just telling children what they should say about themselves and, very surface material. Okay. I also want to say, which is really important, which is going to tie up, I also had the experience while working at the Summit School to work with children that were in a after-school program who had a social skills after-school curriculum once a week implemented for an after-school program. It was a mainstream school that they were in. I did this sort of material, I executed it with them. I found that not only were they not able to communicate their thoughts and their feelings, but some of the, they weren't able to perceive other people's, points of view. They weren't able to draw upon outside factors, about what's going on in the outside world or within themselves. And there are a lot of variables, but I do feel that if it's not ingrained in the foundation of a child's first few years of learning, it's very difficult to instill later on. Not to say that it can't be, because we do have children that come in to the high school level, and it does happen, but I think it's very important to do it at a very young age, because it has to be, ethics has to be part of us.